If you like to make your NFL games a little bit more interesting, you've come to the right place. It's the Even Money Podcast with Ross Tucker and Steve Fezzik.
Yeah, Vegas, baby, Vegas. It is the Even Money Betting Podcast. We are, of course, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. And can you feel it? I mean, by the end of this week, every NFL team will have reported to training camp. We are a week away from the Hall of Fame game, which is just bananas on Thursday. Really hard to believe that that's only a week away, which, by the way, is why next week we will do an NFL preseason betting primer with the great Steve Fezzik. We know a lot of you are anxious. It's been a while. Maybe you don't bet on basketball or baseball. You like football. You like to bet on football. We're here for you. We are, I guess, considered the number one NFL betting podcast. So starting next week, we will give you the primer on how to bet NFL preseason. It's popular for DFS. It's getting more and more popular for prop bet. So we will be all over that next week. Today, we have something really interesting. I don't know if we've done this before, but this was Steve's idea, so all the credit goes to him. Steve did a deep dive statistical analysis of all the NFL teams, and based upon that, he has his overrated and underrated list of teams. We also, by the way, will get to his Week 9 bets, because he's got a couple of them as well as we continue to go through every week of the regular season with Steve looking ahead. A lot of it's based on Warren Sharp's, schedule disparity stuff, rest disparity stuff. So Steve is all over it. The Steve I reference is the one and only Steve Fezzik, at Fezzik Sports and only at Fezzik Sports on social media. He's got that cool seminar coming up, VegasBettingEvent.com, Steve?
Yes, sir. August 1st and 2nd. And that's the only place you can sign up is Vegas Betting Event. If you think I have a website and you're going there and you're signing up, that's not me. You're being scammed. And I only sell picks. Pregame.com, nowhere else.
Vegas Betting Event and pregame.com, at Fezzik Sports. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. I thought Donovan McNabb was awesome on yesterday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. A lot of news going on, by the way, around the NFL this time of year with guys suspended and injuries. If you want to keep up on more than just the betting stuff, you really need to listen or watch youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It's very similar to this show. It's in the offseason 3 times a week, during the season 5 times a week, about 26 minutes or less, just making sure you guys know exactly what's going on in the NFL. You can also follow us on social media at Ross Tucker Pod. And now is probably as good as any time to do 2 things. One is sign up to become a Tuckheads member at patreon.com/RT Media so you can see all of the bets that Steve and I make throughout the NFL season in black and white, as well as rate, review, subscribe, share. Remember, if you take advantage of any of the sponsors that you hear on the show or that you see on the sponsor page at rosstucker.com, or even if you just rate and review the show and then send me that screenshot, ross@rosstucker.com, your email will go to the top of the queue and Steve will answer whatever strategy idea you have. You'll at least get an answer and you'll know the math as Steve sees it. So, all right, so Steve, let's dive into this. We haven't done this before. Overrated, underrated. I'm very excited about this. And I want to know what was sort of the impetus for this. And can you go through your methodology and analysis before we actually get into any teams?
Yeah, so I was looking through the Vegas Sports and Information Network, puts out a summary. It's a great newsletter, about 90 pages. You have to purchase it. And I was going through all these teams, and then they had some statistical numbers really, really in depth on all the different teams. And I was thinking to myself, what's that book? Football betting for dummies. Something like that. Like, how can I simplify this? And I'll go back to the great Dr. Bob Stoll. So Dr. Bob, before anyone else, really was a big believer in starting. How good is a team? Well, look at the record. No, the record doesn't matter. Look at their yards per play differential. Look at how many yards they gain, how many yards they give up. And there's some shocking numbers from last year in terms of if you compare a team's record versus their yards per play, they just don't jive. Basically, now you could go through and say this team had a lot of close wins and a lot of positive turnover, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But bottom line is these yards per play, it tells the story. How good was your offense? How good was your defense? And that story is drastically different than what the narrative is on a lot of these teams.
Okay. What about like the end of the game or the end of the first half where there's 2 seconds left, the other team throws the ball underneath or runs a draw, and the guy gets like 60 yards, but nobody really cares because they're empty calories and they don't score, clock runs out. In fact, it's good defense to let them do that and let the clock run out. Doesn't that skew some of these numbers, especially in a single game or in a shorter sample size?
Absolutely. So that's a great point, that this is just a starting basic building block, and you've got plays that pollute all these numbers. That's a great example you use at the end of the half. A fake punt. You pick up 60 yards on a fake punt. That shouldn't count. So these numbers can certainly be improved upon, but they're a great starting point.
Okay. And then when you say great starting point for what? What's after that?
Basically, I have reached my conclusions on these teams last year. They were overrated or underrated. Well, there's a whole lot of changes going on as well. So you need to incorporate that as well. But I don't think you can really start doing all the adjustments in terms of your power ratings without making that first adjustment and just saying, hey, here's a team that looked awesome last year, but they really weren't very good at all.
Okay, well, let's dive into it. Give me your first, maybe most overrated team. Now, Steve, is this overrated last year or overrated coming into this year?
Both. It carries over into this year. So there are 3 teams that had solid years, exceeded expectations, and they're all overrated. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they got out, and all 3 of these teams got outgained on a yards per play basis by like 0.2 to 0.3. So, Pittsburgh, not a shocker that happens. You could make the case, hey, Pittsburgh feasts on turnovers. Watt is amazing. And they do it every year. So that being said, Pittsburgh did get outgained by 0.3 yards per play. But the next 2, pretty shocking. Kansas City, and I understand you talk about these data that pollutes everything, like that. You really should take that Week 18 38-0 loss to Denver out of this data. But Kansas City got outgained on a yards per play basis. For a 15-win team to get outgained, that is crazy. That's insane. Kansas City really didn't win 15 games last year. Mahomes is God, and they won every close game, but they really were much more statistically of like an 11-win team at best. And the Rams, the narrative on the Rams is that, hey, the Eagles were rolling everyone, and the Rams were in the red zone and could have won that playoff game in Philly. Well, that's true, but the Rams just weren't very good statistically. 5.4 yards per play. Ross, they gave up 5.7. So their offense was average. Their defense was below average in yards per play. And now I would say if there's one team that everyone's talking it up about being the sleeper to win the Super Bowl, it's the Rams, 37-year-old quarterback. I'm not seeing it.
Whoa, okay. So I will say this. The Steelers and the Chiefs' numbers didn't surprise me that much. Steelers, I think you're right about, the turnovers, and they find a way to win all those close games. I think we kind of knew that. And I also think we could kind of see last year that the Chiefs were just finding a way to make the play they needed to make late in games to win those games. That the Rams thing is interesting because I thought they had a young, talented team and that they really were playing their best late in the year. They did a lot of good things against the Eagles in that playoff game. That's a surprise to me that they got outgained that significantly.
And what might not be a surprise, the Bears, a team a lot of people are supporting this year, they were awful. So 4.5 yards per play. Their defense gave up almost 6. So from a statistical perspective, the Bears were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. So their season win number this year at 8.5. If you expect them, a team that was almost one of the worst teams to have a winning record, that is a leap of faith.
So even with the additions, the new coach, you're still not going there?
Oh, they'll be better, but they'll win 7 or 8 games. I'm not going to where they could have a winning record. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting how much a coach can make a difference. But by the way, the guy's never been a coach before. He might be terrible. You know, like he's a good offensive coordinator, but he's very much an unknown as a head coach in the NFL. What do you say, Steve, to the people that point to the Chiefs in particular, but also to a lesser extent, maybe the Steelers or the Rams, and say, listen, Steve, we know you like stats. We know you're a numbers guy. We know that, you know, yards per play is a pretty good indicator. But you know what's a really good indicator? That at the end of close games, Patrick Mahomes always makes the play needed for his team to win. Always, always, always. Every close game. They've won like 15 or 16 one-score games in a row. Like that's a stat too, Steve.
And that's why watching the football games really helps, because I do believe that 3rd and 6 in the first quarter, Patrick Mahomes doesn't care. 3rd and 6 in the fourth quarter, game on the line, he runs for 9 yards, moves the chains. Absolutely. So, yeah, Kansas City.
You know what's funny, by the way, Steve? Hearing you talk, it makes me feel like the Chiefs are like an outstanding live betting team. You know, I know we're going to talk about more live betting stuff this season and certainly as we move forward, but it feels like they're always down a score, like at halftime or whatever, and then they come back to win. I feel like the Chiefs might be like your ultimate, hey, just wait till they get down, wait till it's close or they get down, and then bet on them.
Yes, but you may not want to do it when they're playing a juggernaut like the Eagles in the Super Bowl, where they just massively outclassed. And we could make that case for Kansas City. You know what? We can't make that case for Pittsburgh this year. I have no confidence in Aaron Rodgers pulling out close games. So that would not apply to the Steelers, but it does to Kansas City.
More great stuff right after this. Good news and bad news as it relates to Labatt. The good news is the Labatt lime is delicious, and I had a bunch this weekend. The bad news is I need to buy more. But then I have more good news because I will upload that receipt and continue to rack up points for incredible exclusive merch. It's buy beer, get gear, rewards.labattusa.com. What about the Rams?
You know, they just don't have that good of a defense. The KC defense gets stops at key. I do think the KC defense steps up when the game's on the line. I don't think the Rams defense is good enough to do it.
All right, let's go to the underrated teams, which I like as well. It's nice to be positive. So the overrated were Steelers, Chiefs, Rams, Bears. Those 4. You also have 4 underrated teams, Steve. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so 3 teams projected to make the playoffs. You know, Baltimore is the king of the regular season. All they do is put up phenomenal stats. They gain almost 7 yards per play. Their defense gives up just a little over 5. That is NFL elite. Think about this. So every time Baltimore snaps the ball, they get 1.7 yards more than Kansas City. All right, 1.7 yards per play. and their defense is a little bit better than Kansas City's. How this team can't win the Super Bowl is just amazing. They're a different team in the playoffs. We'll worry about that when they make the playoffs again, but during the regular season, just awesome. Two other teams that had really good YPP. This shocked me. Green Bay didn't shock me. They were really good. So they outgained their opponents by 1 yard per play. Every time they run a play, their opponent runs a play, they pick up a yard on the field. But Ross, the 6-win 49er team, has had a great statistical profile. 6.2 yards per play. They only gave up 5.2. If they were that good in a down year when everyone was injured, my goodness, if Purdy and company stay healthy, 49ers are going to roar right back to 12 wins. And then one team that probably won't surprise you, the Tennessee Titans. Terrible quarterback play from Levis, terrible special teams play, but from an overall line of scrimmage perspective, not a bad team. They only gained 5 yards per play, but they only gave up 5.2. So here was one of the worst teams in the NFL, Ross, that had the statistical profile of an 8-win team.
That is fascinating. I mean, the Ravens stuff, that's got to be so maddening and frustrating for their fans. I mean, that they just can't do it in the playoffs. And that there are really only two schools of thought with the Niners right now, Steve. It's like either they're old and oft injured and they're kind of washed. You think about Trent Williams and McCaffrey and all these guys that were banged up last year, or those guys are coming back with a vengeance and they're not washed at all and they're going to have a terrific year. Nobody's predicting 8 or 9 or 10 wins for the Niners. It's either double digit and they're back or the wheels fall off.
Yeah, and they're going 12-5 and they're going to be right back in the NFC title game.
Wow. So you have that much faith, but part of that, Steve, is based on health, which you can't really
That's 100% right. And, you bring up a great point, Ross. Like, the number one thing that drives me crazy is when the media guys pick who they're going to have, to win the Super Bowl, and then it's Thanksgiving, and they're like, "Well, I picked the Lions, and I'm sticking with my pick." And it's like, imagine you were live wagering, right? Like a marathon, and you get to watch the first 20 miles get run. You might want to change your selection based upon what you're seeing, right?
Yes, if you have that opportunity, for sure. And that's also, by the way, why people should have started to bail on the Lions a little bit when their whole defense was hurt last year. That's certainly something. All right, so the underrated teams, according to Steve, we've got Tennessee, Baltimore, Niners, and the Packers. And again, Steve, these are all based primarily on yards per play differential, which you believe is as indicative of a metric as there is.
I believe it to be the best starting metric to use and then start tweaking it for all these other reasons. And you mentioned some of them earlier in the podcast.
Got it. Okay, the other thing we're doing is hopefully getting to an email question, which we love, ross@rosstucker.com. So keep sending those in. But we also want to talk about a couple of week 9 bets. Are you going back to the Houston Texans? Well, did we not just bet the Houston Texans last week against somebody? And now here in week 9, you like Houston plus 1.5 against Denver. Is that right?
Yeah, you know what? Full disclosure, I could have put Houston on the overrated team list because their wide PP last year was lousy. It was like equal on offense and defense. And I'm like, probably shouldn't do that and then pick them again in a game of the year. But Houston's getting no respect whatsoever. Houston's hosting Denver. This is November 2nd, week 9, Ross. Both these teams supposed to win 9.5 games. Houston's home. Houston has a decent home field advantage. And they're the underdog. They're catching 1.5. Now, if Houston was laying 1.5, this wouldn't be a play. But I don't see much separating these two teams. And I get that plus 1.5 associated with a team that I think should be a slight favorite. Have to play Houston.
I'm a little surprised by that. I really am. I would think the Texans would be favored in that game. who are the Broncos to be favored on the road in Houston? Like, what have the Broncos done where they're favored on the road in Houston? Houston is elite at corner and edge rusher. I happen to think Stroud will be better than he was last year, kind of learned some lessons. Greg Cosell and I talked about that on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. In year 2, they believe they've fixed the offensive line. I don't know. I'm a little surprised Denver is the favorite in that one. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You also have a total you like, a Monday Night Football total already, Steve, for Monday, November 3rd.
Yeah, let's get in front of a likely line move. Arizona at Dallas. Both those teams, Ross, I think are over teams that can move the chains, score a lot. Like Dallas last year, their average game was 48 points, even with all the troubles that they had and the injuries on offense. Their defense couldn't stop anyone. Arizona's going to have a good offense, some chinks in the armor on defense. 47.5. Bold prediction. This total will be 50-something when this game kicks off in November. Let's play over 47.5.
Wow. That would be some significant closing line value if you got in it now. Speaking of value, we provide a lot of value to you guys every week, including when Steve will answer your questions. So this is from the season, Steve. Sometimes I keep ones from the prior season till we get closer to the next season, so you're kind of in season mode. And this is one we get all the time. And this comes from Brad Payton. He said, on a recent episode, you were discussing the NFL Week 2 line of San Francisco -7 versus New Orleans. Steve was going to bet it now at -7. And Ross, you said you'd wait until it moved to -7.5 and then tease it down to -1.5. Why would you wait for the line to move against you before teasing? Wouldn't it be preferable to tease now to -1 rather than wait until later and only tease to -1.5? Aren't the DK teaser odds of -120 the same regardless of whatever line you bet it at? Thanks. Brad, I'll give you my answer to that. My answer is because that's what Steve has told me to do. Because I think it's a really good question. Why would I not just tease it from -7 to -1? Why would I have to make it -1.5? But that's what you always tell me to do, that you got to go through the 7 and through the 3. And so that's my answer, Steve, but I know you have the math for Brad.
Yeah, absolutely. So get Stanford Wong, Sharp Sports Betting, the book, and he talks about basic strategy teasers. You're really supposed to only do these with home teams, by the way. And you want to tease home teams that are -7.5, -8, and -8.5. 6-point teaser downward through the 3, through the full 7. You're not supposed to tease 7-point favorites down to -1 because that has not been a profitable subset. So, and the question here is that when you have a 7-point favorite, that doesn't qualify. It's like blackjack, basic strategy. I don't tease 7-point favorites. I do tease 7.5-point favorites. However, now, of course, if you have a 7-point favorite that you know, based on your power ratings, it's going to move to 7.5 or 8, of course it's even better to go ahead and tease it then if you're confident of the line move. But you know what? Sometimes 7-point favorites move to 6.5-point favorites. So if you're not confident of the line move, if you tease a 7-point favorite and they drop to 6.5, now you got yourself a pretty bad bet on your teaser. So if you aren't confident on your projections of the line moves, you're probably better off just waiting. And in fact, pulling back the curtain, a lot of pros only like to tease, especially during preseason, 5 minutes before the game start, because they know, hey, now I can really look at the snapshot of all the lines, and I know every single one of my teasers is going to qualify as a Wong teaser because there's not going to be any more line moves. The games are about to start.
Ooh, I like that. And Steve teased preseason a little bit, preseason teasers. As a reminder, we will be doing Steve's preseason betting primer, preseason betting 101, whatever you want to call it, in 1 week. So it's time. I mean, it's time for you to engage. It's time for you to tell all your buddies that bet, all your friends, hey, it's time. If you've been away for a while this offseason, get back involved with the Even Money Betting Podcast, whether you listen on audio or it's youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Check him out at Fezzik Sports. That's how you can find all the stuff he's doing. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. Other than that, good luck, everybody. Hope you guys win some money.
Thanks for tuning in to Even Money. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.